What's going on, Bulls Nation? Welcome in to CHGO Bulls Draft Week, the final day of the NBA Draft Week, presented by Coors Light. Make the most of the times you choose to chill by reaching for an icy cold Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart. Just go to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. I'm Peck, Bulls_Peck, joined by my guys, Big Dave, BAWL Sports, and Will the Goat Gottlieb. Will_Gottlieb. Our pal and producer behind the controls, it's the one and only Stephen Nicholas. Joey is off today. Good for him. Lots to get to on today's show. Happy Friday, everybody. The draft wrapped up yesterday with round 2. Bulls stay out of round 2, did not make a selection. They did add an undrafted free agent, a familiar name for Illini fans. We will touch on that. And then on the back end of the show, more rumors and whispers about the Bulls not only letting DeMar walk or maybe working on a sign and trade for him, but the Bulls shopping Vooch as well. That's all ahead on today's show. Gentlemen, how are we doing? Happy Friday. Everybody feeling good?
Feeling great. I'm ready for the draft to be done, and I'm ready for free agency to be starting, and that is this weekend. So we got a lot going on here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that. But most importantly, big shout out to Will Gottlieb's Superman curl right now. It's getting, I'm digging it right now. It's smooth, bro. I'm digging it.
I was gonna say something, Dave, but I decided to save it for you to comment on because it was glorious.
God forbid we go one episode without commenting on my hair.
Yes, God forbid. God forbid.
Yeah, this is why we do this podcast, so we could talk about how handsome Will is, right?
That awesome hair. How dare we talk about it?
How dare we?
So, gentlemen, after the hype of Matas Buzelis falling to the Bulls at 11, somewhat unexpectedly, and hearing what we had to say from him on draft night, hearing what we had to say, hearing what AK had to say about drafting Buzelis and the future and the direction of this Bulls team. Yesterday, we all sat and watched round 2, and probably not too many surprised to see the Bulls not jump in and get a second-round pick, as we saw them do for Julian Phillips in last year's draft. And then right when round 2 wraps up, you start seeing all kinds of tweets being fired off by Woj, Shams, and others about all of these undrafted guys who get picked up by various NBA teams, many of them on two-way contracts. That was not the case with the Bulls. They did, however, add a Exhibit 10 contract, and it is Illini's Marcus Domask, a guy who played his first 4 years at Southern Illinois and then had a fifth year of eligibility where he was a fifth-year senior with the Illini and put up some pretty impressive stats in this past season. There you see the tweet from the Illini men's basketball Twitter account saying that he was picked up by the Bulls. Kind of an underwhelming day yesterday if Bulls fans were hoping for a bit more news and another fresh name to add to the pile. But we'll see if Domask sticks around for summer league, training camp, etc. What did you guys make of the fact that that was the lone move we saw from the Bulls yesterday?
Honestly, I'm not too surprised by it. The Bulls have 15 players under contract right now. We'll see what happens with Torrey Craig. His deadline to pick up his option, I believe, is tomorrow. They've got, Javonte Green, Andre Drummond, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, who are all, their rights are still on the Bulls books right now. So in order to have picked up anybody for like a real roster spot, you would have had to make room, which I don't think they are willing to do at this point. They've got to see what happens with Zach LaVine, with DeMar DeRozan, with free agency. There's only one player, I believe, under contract right now as a two-way, and that's Andrew Funk. So they could have signed somebody there. Maybe they non-guaranteed bit him and move him back to a two-way. Maybe they ultimately move Domask to a two-way. Who knows? But it wasn't surprising to me to see the Bulls stand pat and not get back into the second round. Maybe a little bit surprising not to get anything done on the undrafted market, but we're talking like it would have been great to sign somebody, but I just think that they've got some other dominoes that need to fall before they can really start to think about those positions. And, maybe they get a couple of extra openings that they can use in other ways to bring in some other young talent. So there were guys that I would have liked them to sign, Isaiah Crawford, to just name one off the top of my head, but didn't happen that way. And they will have to fill those spots in another way. And maybe it's bringing back Sanogo and who else was there too? Right now I'm blanking on the other.
Sanogo, Henry Drell. I think was also on a two-way. But I believe, according to SpotRack, Sanogo and Drell are both restricted free agents coming into this summer.
So they could just be saving those spots for those two guys.
Yeah, I was happy they did nothing. I was happy they didn't do anything. They stood pat. There was nothing they could have done that would have, raised my excitement, for what they've done so far in this offseason. I needed to just be cool and smooth and just even keeled until it gets to free agency. And then you start making those moves that they're supposed to make, that we want to see them make, as far as DeMar, as far as Zach, as far as Vooch. I want to see that happen. So I was completely fine with them doing absolutely nothing. They got the guy that they wanted in the first round. Like AK said, it was a guy they didn't expect to be there. It's a guy who wants to be there. It's a guy that they wanted. So they're very happy with that result. And I'm completely fine. I didn't want to give up any more capital. I'm sure you guys didn't either give up any more capital in this draft to do anything. So the fact they did nothing, the fact that it was just a boring non-Bulls day, except for after when the draft was over and they signed my man Domask, and that was it. I was completely fine with that. I'm completely cool with it.
Our guy Jake Flanagan in the comments saying Domask is extremely good when he gets smaller guards isolated and takes them down in the post. Should get 20 points per game if involved in summer league. I mentioned he had a pretty impressive year for that Illini team. He started all 38 games that he played for them, averaging just shy of 16 points on 45, 30, 87 shooting splits, also tacking on 5 boards and 4 dimes per game. Again, we'll see. This is one of those kind of players you expect teams to see add to their various summertime rosters, whether it be summer league or training camp. A 5-year player. He's 24 years old. I do not think Domask is somebody who's going to find his way into, not let alone the 15-man roster, probably not even one of these two-way spots. But because he's an Illini name, he's going to generate a lot of noise from Bulls fans.
Yeah, and it's a little, I don't know what the right word would be to use to just mention the fact that they are continuing to sign guys that are that have only played in the state of Illinois. Does their scouting lead the state? Who knows? But yeah, it's on brand.
Well, it's that or Iowa, Goat. Those are the two states.
Well, that was the former regime. I feel like this one is just pulling at the from Illinois strings, and maybe that works out. I think really what they need to be doing is prioritizing getting guys on the summer league roster who can help make Matas look really good, because that's what they need to do. That's what this whole next couple years, whether it's just this year and then they start to kickstart it, whether it's the next 3 years and they're trying to keep that pick from conveying, they need to help their younger guys develop. So, you bring in a 5-year guard who can help facilitate at the table a little bit, create mismatches, and then, help Matas look better. That's really what it's all about. I don't want a situation where you're, putting the ball in Dalen Terry's hands and trying to make him make everybody better when he can't really do that at this point. And not to criticize Dalen, but I think that's what we wanted to see at that time. We wanted to see the ball in his hands to see what he could create. But I think right now what they should be focusing on is how can they make their young guys look as best as possible. I think bringing in guards that can help set the table is the way to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel it's all about Matas, and that should be the focus going into the summer league. As far as the young guys are concerned, they should be focused on him. And like Will said, just signing guys and surrounding and filling out that roster who I feel can complement, just Matas. He's the only one I'm really concerned with. Everybody else, I'm you'll find your place. And that's what summer league is for. It's about finding your place and finding your space. With Matas, we already know he's going to have a big role on this team. So it's about surrounding him with what he needs. Let's see what he can do when he got people around him that's comfortable, with him in his game. And let's get the ball in his hands. So that's completely my main focus. I hope that's the focus of the Bulls when it comes to the youth. Dalen Terry, I would be surprised if he played, but I wouldn't be just super shocked, but I'd be surprised if he played in this summer league. But I am expecting to see Sanogo get out there for sure. And maybe Batum get out there as well and play. But it's all about Matas for me this summer and his development going forward in this summer league as far as the youth is concerned.
We don't know. We haven't gotten word yet from the Bulls about who's going to be playing in summer league for them. I would imagine Julian Phillips plays as a second-year former
Julian,
second-round pick. Dalen Terry should play. I mean, he's played like less than 100 games in his career, and he could use the extra reps. And it would be great to see him just absolutely dominate for a game, make everybody else look good around him, and then great, he looks good, let's pull him. Like, that's what they did with Patrick going into his second year. He looked great, he scored 20, and then they were just like, okay, you can play one game, we're good, don't need to prove anything else. That's like what you want to see out of your young players, is them to absolutely destroy the competition, especially in their second or third year at summer league. So I'd be fine with that. Now it goes the other way too. If he looks bad, then it's like, okay, maybe there's some red flags here. But I think like Dalen found a role for himself towards the end of last season, being a very good defensive player and not necessarily like being a point guard breaking down the defense. So it wouldn't really concern me if he didn't necessarily look good, but like, he's had 2 full seasons in the NBA weight room. He's gotten a lot bigger. He's worked on his game. He should go out there and destroy everyone.
Justin Johnson in the comments chiming in about Matas, saying every video I watch of him makes him my favorite draft pick since D Rose, saying the mentality is everything we've been missing for years. Wow. Maybe referring to the confidence and the emotion that Buzelis has been expressing on draft night in particular. Rob in the comments saying Julian Phillips, Matas Buzelis, Sanogo, Domask at Summer League are the ones to watch. I don't know about Funk anymore being a 2-way. Maybe he'll just be Windy City. I mean, we had some fun with those. I think he was we called up to a 2-way for like 18 games towards the end. The Bulls were just depleted with injuries. We had some fun rooting for that first ever bucket from Andrew Funk that I don't think ever came. But I maybe more so than recent years, this should be, assuming all of those names that Rob rattled off in his comment to play, it'll be a fun, interesting crop. And you hope, of course, that Buzelis is at the forefront of whatever they are running, offensively, especially.
That's what it's got to be about. I mean, they got to be bad, young, and fun this year. So let's get that started in Summer League.
Yeah, and I think that's why I didn't care about Dalen playing at all, because it's about Matas to me. I don't want anything taken away from him. I want him to have all the reps, all the possessions, every single thing funneling and going through him. If Dalen looks great and he comes out there, fine. If Dalen looks bad and he comes out there, it won't bother me in the slightest. And it won't move the needle for me either way on how I feel about him. So I'm cool with him not being out there doing anything and just giving all that time to Matas and letting him do what he do.
Carlito's Way saying, would you take late season Dalen Terry's production for Zoe next season? I think that there's still a pretty wide gap from the best version of Dalen we've seen on an NBA court and what Lonzo Ball was doing for the Bulls as a 2-way player 3 years ago before he got hurt.
No, I think he's saying, would you want that kind of production out of Lonzo next year? Like, how great would it be if you could get that kind of defensive production out of Lonzo in his first year back since 2022? I mean, yeah, if he looks like Dalen, like, he's very raw offensively, but he was a hound defensively. He's big. He can guard multiple positions. Like, that would be awesome if Lonzo could get back to that level. Like, just seeing him on the court would be awesome. So, playing at a high level, I think, would just make it that much better. But if he does get back, and that's still a big if at this point, knock down some open shots, keep the ball moving, play some defense if you can, come off the bench and play 5 minutes here and there. Like, that would just be awesome for Lonzo to be able to just get back on the court and do anything.
Anko in the comments saying unpopular opinion, but I really hope they re-sign DeMar. We're going to talk about that and more still ahead on CHGO Bulls.
Manscaped. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to announce the Matt Peck Smooth Sound. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure that you're groomed from your pubes to your bum. Thanks to our friends at Manscaped, you can make this season your smoothest yet. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra is the ultimate bundle to keep your boys downstairs cool while looking hot. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off and free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use the code BULLS, because it's summertime and the trimming is easy. Of course, they send you that cool package, because inside that package, you'll find the star of the show, that Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. It's their 5th generation trimmer, which features 2 interchangeable next generation safe skin blade heads, one standard for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth and wherever your heart desires. And more wet products that you need? Say no more, because Manscaped's new Buff Bundle is all you need to keep the summer heat a breeze. So, like I said, get 20% off and free shipping with the code BULLS at manscaped.com. Use that 20% off and free shipping with that code BULLS at manscaped.com. It's smooth sex summer, people. Get on board or get left behind.
Today's show also brought to you by Lucy Nicotine. Are you thinking about leveling up your nicotine routine? If so, you got to check out the products at Lucy Nicotine. 100% pure nicotine, and it's always tobacco-free. It is available in a variety of delivery systems, pouches, gum, and their favorite, my favorite, what they call breakers, which are nicotine pouches, but they have a little capsule of liquid inside that helps saturate the pouch and gives you an extra burst of flavor when you bite into it. You can get those breakers in either 4 milligram or 8 milligram doses of nicotine, and the gum and the regular pouches even have a wider range of milligrams per dose available. You got to try all of their different flavors. You can get classic mint, berry citrus, espresso. My personal favorite right now is apple ice. They are delicious, and they give me that nicotine kick that I occasionally crave on a busy, stressful day. Let's level up your nicotine routine with Lucy. Go to lucy.co, that's lucy.co/CHGO Bulls, and use that same promo code CHGO Bulls to get 20% off your first order. Plus, Lucy always offers free shipping and has a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind. That's lucy.co and promo code CHGO Bulls for 20% off and always free shipping. Here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. This warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. All right, y'all, moving right along. So Anko was saying in the comments, hey, unpopular take right now, but I don't want to let DeMar DeRozan go. And we've all said countless times over how much DeMar DeRozan has meant to this organization over the last 3 years. He has been their floor of productivity and competitiveness on the court for 3 seasons. In 2 of which he was an all-star. One of them, he was all-NBA second team, I believe. And countless epic moments in the clutch stats through the roof, led this team to countless victories that otherwise they would not have had. And on top of all of that, you get the absolute class veteran guy who is always showing up for the community, showing up for his younger teammates, being a mentor to them, doing workouts with Dalen Terry, going to Ayo Dosunmu's retirement jersey ceremony at University of Illinois, countless other examples, working out with P. Will as well. We all know and love everything that DeMar has done for this team, but the question is now the time, especially with the trade of Caruso and drafting a 19-year-old project like Buzelis, is now finally the time when AK is pointing towards a rebuild? Because if he is, DeMar DeRozan sticking around on a new contract makes very little sense, Will.
Yeah, I mean, look, as much as DeRozan has been great, and like he really has, I know every time we talk about this, it's like we got to qualify it first. He was sensational for the Bulls, awesome for the locker room. The young players really looked up to him, and he made games entertaining. Like he was just so fun to watch. But at the end of the day, like this season is about more than competing for the playoffs. And I know we've talked about it a lot, but like they have a chance here to keep their pick in a loaded draft. This is not a situation where you you go for it in the first half of the season and then, okay, maybe you pull the plug if things aren't going the way you want at the trade deadline. They really have to get themselves in the bottom 6-8 of this draft because, yes, even though it's flattened out, the lottery odds, there's no guarantees. They have to prevent themselves from the downside risk. They cannot be in a situation where enough teams jump in front of them to where they get pushed out of the top 10 and that pick conveys to the Spurs. This is like just such an important moment in this Bulls roster building that like the idea of even Zach or Vooch like being just too good for too long helps push the Bulls out of that range to where they could get unlucky in the draft. And so I think it's really more about like limiting your exposure to downside when we talk about like letting DeMar walk or letting Zach go or Vooch or whatever it is. Caruso, obviously same thing. Like he was just so productive last year. The team was so clutch with DeRozan. When you remove those two guys, it's going to get a lot worse, even if there is growth from some of the young players. It's hard to rebuild and nobody ever wants to do a full teardown. But I actually think that like what AK is doing right now, assuming that I'm right, is he's setting up a situation where you take a step back this year. You're not good. You keep your pick. But all of a sudden you go into next year with Kobe and Io and Josh Giddey and Matas Buzelis in year 2 and a top 10 pick and Patrick Williams. And you can feel really good about that young core going forward. You've got maybe some cap space if you get off of Zach and Vooch. That's a situation where you can you don't have to do the 3-year tank for the bottom, collect as many picks as you can, what the Nets are doing, what, some of these other teams who are really just tearing it down and starting over. The Bulls are trying to skip that kickstart. And it's a very thin line to walk. You've got to thread the needle perfectly. But if they can do it and get a Cooper Flagg or an Ace Bailey next year, you're cooking and you're in a great situation to build forward with a bunch of really promising young players. That I think is what AK is trying to do. And if you risk that and make the play in this year and that pick conveys, all of a sudden this thing starts to get, it starts to look like you're going to be stuck in the middle again for years and years. And so it's not fun to rebuild. It's not fun to be bad, but that's why you be young and fun at the same time. And I think that can kind of stem the tide a little bit while you take that down year. And now all of a sudden you're in a much better situation moving forward if you get that guy at the top of the draft. And obviously that's a risk, but that's what this season should be about.
Yeah, and I'll go another route on you, Will. And again, we love DeMar DeRozan, the wonderful DeMar DeRozan. He's been every single thing you want him to be. He's been everything you needed him to be on this team. Them days where they just needed a 50-point scorer. You needed to feel some joy in that United Center. You needed somebody representing. We used to talk a lot in the offseason, guys, about just how proud we would be to see DeMar DeRozan going around doing all these podcasts, and he was representing the Chicago Bulls. Just that kind of pride of watching him speak so eloquently and intelligently on these podcasts, just about life, just about his struggles with depression, just about growth in the NBA, anything. And we knew that he was on our team. It was a great feeling, man. He was an amazing ambassador for the Chicago Bulls, also an amazing player. But it's time for him to roll. And if anything, I can go outside of basketball, Will. Watching that Kendrick Lamar concert told me it was time for him to go home. Seeing DeMar DeRozan in LA, having the time of his life on the stage with Kendrick, seeing him at the video shoot, it just looked like it was time for him to go. Like he just needed to be home with his people in LA, because I think that's what's going to happen. That's just my opinion if Paul George doesn't resign, but that's another story. But I just feel like it's his time, man. And he said himself after the season was over, when they lost the play-in, he wants to see those guys. He doesn't want to be around if they're not trying to win, because he wants to win. And obviously he's been in year 15 right now. It's not time for a rebuild for him. It's time to, hey, man, it's for legacy. I want to win. I'm tired of just doing the play-in, and that's it. I want to win. I want to go far in the playoffs, and that's what I'm on. And what's the first moves the Bulls do? They trade Alex Caruso. That shows you immediately that is not on their MO of what they're trying to do. So that should let them know that this ain't going to be it. And not only do they trade Caruso, you go get Josh Giddey, whose game doesn't really mesh with a guy like DeMar DeRozan, because he's got to have the ball. Giddey, he has to have the basketball for him to do what he does best out there on the floor. So no knock to DeMar. You'll never hear me say anything bad about DeMar at all, ever. But I just feel like it's his time to go, and it's his time to go win. And I think we'd be doing him a disservice trying to hold him here and hold on to some semblance of just an old remains. It'd be like a Coliseum that got torn down, just holding on to him of some old remains that looked great a few years ago, man. It's time for him to move on and do his thing.
Thomas in the comments saying, I love DeMar. Don't want him on a 30 to 40 plus a year contract on a bad team. I'd rather just have a bad young team. A lot of similar comments being echoed by our fellow Bulls fans. What's up, Will?
I was just going to say, I saw a comment about who else is going to be in the race for Cooper Flagg next year. I do think it's going to get a little crowded. Obviously, you have the Nets, who just traded away their best player in Mikal Bridges. The Wizards, the Hornets, I think, are going to be pretty bad. The Pistons, both the Pistons and the Hornets, I tweeted this today, who they drafted, Ron Holland and Tijan Salone, that tells me that those teams are not interested in trying to get good quick. They're not doing the previous GMs fighting for their job. They're going to take it slow. So those teams are going to be at the bottom. The Spurs are going to get better, but like they won 22 games last year. The Portland Trail Blazers are going to get better, but they won 21 games last year. I think there's going to be a lot of teams like the Jazz, even they're not interested in like being in the middle. They're going to go for it. So I think a lot of teams are going to be kind of taking for the bottom. The Memphis Grizzlies, I think, are the one team that were ahead of the Bulls in the Tankathon standings that I think will be much better next year. But you never know who's going to, trade off their guys and take a swing for the bottom. So I do think it's going to be crowded, and that's why I say like it's more about protecting against your downside. It's protecting against potentially sliding, even if you are one of the 9 worst teams in the league. If 2 teams jump you, all of a sudden you're giving up the 11th pick, and they cannot let that happen. So that's why I just wouldn't mess around with it. And so I think it's like, okay, if you're not going to sign DeRozan, if you're not going to be the team that gives him $40 million, all right, well then who is going to go after him, and what can you maybe get for him on the sign and trade or extend and trade market?
Well, can you do me a favor? I hear a lot of people talk about just Cooper Flag and tanking for Cooper, but it's much bigger than Cooper in this draft coming up, correct?
Oh yeah, I mean this draft is loaded. There were a bunch of what's the top picks in 2025 boards coming out today, so you can go find those. I know Ricky O'Donnell did one. Brian J. NBA on Twitter is a really good follow for NBA Draft Step. He just dropped one, so I'm going to read a couple off of his. Obviously, Cooper Flag is the big one, but you've got Ace Bailey. You've got, he's a big forward, 6'8", who's going to play at Rutgers next year. Hugo Gonzalez, a Spanish point guard who's 6'6". I think he could be really good. Dylan Harper, son of Ron Harper, also going to Rutgers. He is another kind of wing player. Nolan Traore is a guard who's going to play, I believe, in France. There's a couple of big men who could be really good. Rocco Zakarski is one of them. And then one more, whose name I am blanking on. Jaleel Bethea is going to be good. And then, of course, VJ Edgecombe, I think, could be really special too. So, I mean, if you're in the top 10 in this draft, you're going to get a player. If you are in the top 2, you might get like a franchise cornerstone. And that's what the Bulls need to be doing. They've got a good young core, but they don't have a number 1 franchise pillar. They've got a bunch of young players to build with. They need that one guy, and that's the hardest thing to find in the NBA. And it's why teams can trade for picks and just go for the bottom for years and years, and why they may never find anything. So, doing it this way is not without its risks. I think it prevents you from having to go through like 3 or 4 years of being terrible, but it also, you may end up in a situation where you just don't get that guy, and all of a sudden you're back in the middle with like some good young players, but no one to really be that franchise cornerstone.
Robert Cranis, shout out, threw us a $5 super chat saying, fellas, can't help but wonder if we sign and trade DeMar, if we get a couple of seconds, could it be used to then add to Zach LaVine trade? Meanwhile, Spooky Kitty saying, is there a way we could send DeMar to LA with an aging Bron for some first round picks around 2 years in the future? Well, okay. Just to take care of Spooky Kitty's question first, the Lakers have like no draft capital right now. So I do not think, if you're talking about DeMar going home to LA, that the Lakers are the team that's happening with. Unless he wants to go there and LeBron wants him there and he signs on literally like a vet minimum. That is why I think the Clippers are more regularly the team that we are hearing, because it's, if Paul George leaves, then who comes to replace him as a star player to, continue trying to contend with Harden and Kawhi.
Actually, there is a way that the Lakers could make a play for DeRozan. They talked about it today on Hoop Collective. Windhorse brought up a good point, and we can talk about that maybe after our next ad break.
Absolutely. And also I want to address the Miami Heat hypothetical that you posed in your column when it comes to possible destinations for DeMar DeRozan. That and more still ahead on today's CHGO Bulls.
Ray! It's Ray Chevy time, y'all. For you. Visit our partner this June to shop their summer sales event going on all month long at Ray Chevy on Route 12 in Fox Lake and RayChevrolet.com. As one of the top-selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest, you'll always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. Plus, find the perfect tailgate vehicle. Right now, get $12,000 off MSRP on a new 2024 Chevy Silverado, or lease the new 2024 Chevy Trax for only $179 a month for 24 months. That's 2 years. Or cruise into June your own way and shop over 125 of their vehicles that are priced under $20,000. And if you've heard of Ray Chevrolet, then I know you've heard of the Ray Price Promise. It's their guarantee to make your next vehicle more affordable than ever with no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees. That means you'll get the incredible prices we're talking about now. You can expect to see the very same prices when you shop Ray Chevy in-store or online. So shop the summer sales event all month long, visiting Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's try.
Today's show also brought to you by our friends at Circa Sportsbook, offering those tight money line splits and their low hold model. Always striving to have starting odds of -110 for all of those point total over-under spreads you're looking at, all of those game spreads, money lines, -110 almost every single time. Unlike a lot of other sports books these days who push those starting odds to -115 or -120 for no reason other than their own selfishness and greed, Circa ain't doing that to you. They also don't limit players based on their recent winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other sports books who limit their winning players. Circa encourages you to not only, of course, download and try out their Circa Sports Illinois app because they know you'll love it, but download and try any sportsbook app that's out there right now. They know you have a lot of choices. They're confident that when they put themselves up and their app up against the competition, more often than not, you're going to find better user experience, better gameplay, better odds, better value, and they know you will find better customer service at Circa. Real people behind that Circa Sports brand who resolve any issues you might have in a timely fashion. Unlike the other sports books, almost all of whom use that dreaded chatbot. It sucks. No one wants a chatbot. Circa doesn't do it to you. Download the Circa Sports Illinois app at circasports.com/Illinois-app today. Be on the lookout also for Circa's various events, watch parties, and tailgates. They are with our CHGO Cubs crew and friends heading up to Milwaukee for Cubs Brewers. Shout out to them for joining in on that crazy party bus, literally crazy party bus. If you or someone you know may have a gambling problem, just call 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-426-2537. Text GAMB to 833-234 or visit areyoureallywinning.com. Okay, so what were you saying before that break go about how there is conceivably a way that DeMar to the Lakers could happen? Because we always have been talking about DeMar to the Clippers if Paul George leaves is the most likely hypothetical. What can the Lakers do to make that happen?
Yeah, and to be clear, I still think Clippers are probably the more likely scenario just because, I think if Paul George was coming back, that would be done already. So I think they're trying to figure out a trade, and that's why Paul George is either going to opt in and get traded, or he's going to go to a team that has cap space like the 76ers, the Rockets, or the Magic. So if he opts in, he could be going to the Warriors, and that could open up space for the Clippers to make a move for DeRozan. If not, I think it'll be one of those cap space teams, but it seems like he's not going back to the Clippers at this point. As for the Lakers, is what Brian Windhorst was saying. So don't quote me on it, but I think what he said was if D'Angelo Russell opts out of his player option and LeBron takes a pay cut of about $10 million, which would be the first time he's really done that, they would have the full mid-level exception open. And, we've always talked about like the Bulls, if they're going to keep DeRozan, they got to pay more than $20 million because Chicago for $20 million is not as enticing as LA for 13. So you got to pay him 30 or 40. And if that 30 or 40 is no longer available from the Bulls, 12.9 for the mid-level exception in Lakerland, I mean, that is probably like exactly what he's been hoping for many years. So that would be the one scenario where I could see that making sense. The Bulls would not be able to extract anything in that situation because it would be a free agent signing as opposed to a sign and trade. But if they do work out a sign and trade, maybe it's like Hachimura or something. The Lakers have their 2029 and 2031 picks available, I think. So obviously the Bulls would be trying to go for those, but for 35, 36-year-old, probably not going to happen. So I think the Clippers are probably the more compelling candidate. It depends on Paul George's decision. And from what it sounds like, that might come as soon as tomorrow night.
That's going to be serious, man. I'm excited to see that occurring happen because free agency is going to be fun. You can feel the day to decompress. And then on Sunday, let's get back to it and let's get excited about it. But yeah, man, like I'm excited to continue to watch DeMar. And again, in my head, I just really think he's going to end up with the Clippers. Again, I'm basing this on a concert because I saw him and Russell Westbrook up there having the time of their life. together, and for them to be teammates also, that would just be really, really cool to see. But he still has a lot in the tank. That man plays basketball all the time. And Nat talked about just how good he is as far as with the young guys. And again, even at that concert, he had Dalen and he had Kobe with him, when he was at that show to do those kind of things, man. I remember how me and Matt tripped out when we saw him go to when Ayo got his jersey retired. And we just talked about like, man, that is just one of the coolest things you could really do for a young player. He was a rookie. Like didn't have to do that at all to show up to Champaign, Illinois, just to watch a rookie get his jersey retired, man. Like that really meant something to Ayo, man. And it changes how guys play and how guys feel about, veterans. And it's something that he can pass down to them, that they can pass down to the younger guys, coming behind them. So he's showing guys how to treat it and do it the right way. Like, I can't say enough just about how good he is as a basketball player, but I will never say enough about what he's done for them off the floor, man. He has just been a model of what you want your veterans to be when it comes to those young guys.
Andrew in the comments saying, DeMar to LA Lakers makes no sense. LeBron and AD need floor spacers and perimeter defenders, two things Debo isn't. And while I agree with your basketball logic, you might be forgetting the little detail that you know who else isn't a good perimeter shooter or defender? Because it's Russell Westbrook, and that's who LeBron chose to bring to the Lakers over DeMar DeRozan 3 years ago. So it's not like be-all, end-all, logic, X's and O's is what's leading LeBron to make these decisions. If he wants to play with his buddy DeMar, he's going to play with his buddy DeMar, and the Lakers are going to find.
And also, like this is a different situation. I mean, that was Russ at whatever age he was for like $30 million a year. This would be DeMar at 12.5 or $12.9 million a year. And they just drafted Dalton Knecht. They've got Austin Reeves. They need shot creation too. LeBron is 40 years old next year. He cannot like have the ball in his hands for 30% of the time for 82 games. That's too much. And you can always trust DeMar to be available, and you can trust him to make good decisions with the basketball and get you a good shot. So shooting around those three, LeBron shot career high 41% on threes last year. He can space it around DeMar. I think it would work, and it's not like a huge financial risk like the Westbrook situation would have been. But agreed that this would be like, LeBron is for all intents and purposes like making decisions here from a roster perspective. You handpick the coach, you handpick the second round pick. They got a great first round pick to fall to them at 17. They're in a good situation now, and if you can add someone like DeMar to that, I think that raises your floor so much in the regular season. And in a Western Conference where the Lakers are 9, 10, 11, 12, like they need to do that. They need to get themselves in a position where they are not just fighting for their lives at the play-in every year. And there are a few players better than DeMar at raising the floor in the regular season.
Before we shift over and get your thoughts on this hypothetical Jimmy Butler to Philly, DeMar to Miami scenario you proposed, can we just clarify something really quickly? Because TR asked about it in the comments. When does free agency officially start? Because you mentioned tomorrow, Will, but the NBA calendar has it and has had it the last couple of years as June 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern time. So are those two different things?
Yeah, so free agency is going to start at June 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern time. That would be Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central. The deadline to extend players is Sunday. The deadline for player options is tomorrow. So that's what I mean by free agency. Like Paul George, for example, and we can get into this now, for him to be able to go to a team that's already over the cap or that's already into the luxury tax, he needs to opt into his $48 million contract from this year and then get traded. And then he can extend off of that with his new team. If he goes into cap space with the 76ers, who have like unlimited room right now, he can just opt out of his player option and go sign there into cap space. So that is the holdup for like all of free agency right now is Paul George going to opt in and get traded, or is he going to opt out and then go sign somewhere else? And the opt-out situation, which is what I described in this a couple of days ago now, I think there's been some reporting that kind of makes this maybe not quite as possible as I would have thought at the time of writing it. So we can still see about that. But, it does seem like that is kind of the holdup to all of what might happen next week.
Yeah, I think we said that before. Like Paul George is it. He's kind of the needle mover for this free agency about where guys are going to end up and where they're going to land, and that's exciting for Paul George. Shout out to him for that. I don't know. I can't positively say I know exactly what he's going to do because I see it from both angles. Like, one, it's LA. You know, you're there with Kawhi, you're there with your friends. You already
He's
know
got
you
his
got a solid
podcast
team.
studio.
You know what I'm saying? It's right there, man. You know, everything is there. And Jerry, it's LA. No one leaves. Like, it's LA, man. Like, that's what it is. But on the other hand, having an opportunity to go somewhere where he can further his career and might play for a championship, and I'm speaking strictly about the Eastern Conference, getting a better shot at that because, you know, the West is just super crowded. You just talked about the Lakers and the moves that they made. And as Matt said, they're still like a 9, 10, 11, 12. You know what I mean? Like, they're still kind of struggling. That's a team on paper. You're like, damn, this is a good team. But the West is loaded. The West is crowded. You come to the East, you'll have a better shot at being a top 3 team, depending on where he ends up and goes to, if he goes to Philly or wherever. But he has a shot to do that. And I'm curious about what he wants. Because just hearing him talk kind of scared me, you know, about what he was saying. He was like, I don't really care about winning. You know, I just want to go where, you know, I can play the right kind of basketball kind of thing. Is kind of, and I'm paraphrasing about what he said. Will, you can correct me on that. But yeah, man, like, I'm curious just about where he goes because I'm not really sure either way, but I hope it's out of LA so DeMar can move in nicely.
Well, all I was going to say is, Dave, like, the reason he was saying that about coming back and winning not being the most important thing, that was because he had $40 million from the Bulls on the table. It does not seem like that's the case anymore based on the
No. I didn't mean DeMar. I'm talking about Paul George saying that. Paul George said that.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, with DeMar, it's like now the options are a lot less fruitful for him. Like, it does not seem, and maybe there's a world where he does come back to the Bulls because he takes a huge pay cut and, you know, they do want to try to continue to compete, or they do want to, you know, move him at a lower price down the line. Who knows? But it just seems like, you know, the West Coast or one of these more competitive teams, maybe it's the 76ers, those are starting to seem like the options that make more sense to DeMar. But again, all that hinges on whatever Paul George decides.
Before we shift to the latest Vooch rumors, just to round out DeMar, you threw out that possibility of maybe the Sixers making a play for Jimmy Butler instead of Paul George, and if so, Miami trying to get something from Jimmy Butler leaving and doing an extend and trade kind of contract with DeMar and sending him to Miami as Jimmy makes his way to Philly, and that being a scenario where the Bulls could do a couple of things, which is get something for DeMar instead of letting him walk for nothing, and that might even just be a couple of second-round picks. Or maybe you also propose the idea of doing a bit of a salary dump and including Javon Carter in that sign and trade deal.
Yeah, so, I mean, there is a world where DeMar is traded tomorrow. There's a world where he re-signs with the Bulls tomorrow too. But if Paul George opts in and gets traded to, I think this could work with the Warriors too. Let's say Paul George opts in, gets traded to the Warriors, and the Clippers want DeRozan. The Bulls could extend and trade him. The rules for that are that contract extension has to be 2 or fewer years and 5% raises. So that would be $30 million in the first year, $31 million in the second year. He would go to, whether it's, you know, Miami, who's replacing Jimmy Butler, or to the Clippers, who are replacing Paul George in this scenario. And then maybe the Bulls like get off of Javon Carter's $6.5 million, or they pick up a few second-round picks in order to kind of help them, and that's their benefit for playing ball and getting DeRozan more than he otherwise would on the free agent market. Because at this point, like I said, it just doesn't really feel like there's going to be big money out there for DeMar, and so the Bulls are now in a position to pay him more than he would get elsewhere and send him to a team he wants to go. But they're going to have to get something back, and if it's salary, then they need picks in addition, or they maybe try to dump some more of that salary because, you know, Jimmy and Paul George are both making $48 million next year. If the Sixers trade for Jimmy or the Warriors trade for Paul George, that money is going, the Clippers are going to be clearing out a ton of money. And so they can take DeMar at 30 million and still save money, and still take Javon Carter's $6.5 million and still save money. And that sets the Bulls up in a pretty good spot to where they can help DeMar get paid, get him to the situation he wants, and also benefit from it by clearing out some of their space or picking up second round picks. So that would be the situation where I could see him getting traded or extended and traded. Otherwise, I think, they're just going to have to see what happens with Brandon Ingram, what happens with, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, some of these other dominoes that are going to have to fall in addition to Paul George before DeRozan kind of has his remaining options.
All right, so with that, let's now shift to Vooch. I think you mentioned this on during our round 2 draft show yesterday, but there was that report from Matt Moore of the Action Network earlier this week. Thank you, Steven. You see it on your screen there if you're watching on YouTube. The Bulls are known to be looking to move Nikola Vucevic along with the never-ending LaVine saga. Caruso trade both helps and hurts those efforts because Caruso's contract was a quality lubricant, great use of the word lubricant, for teams willing to take on those contracts, which now isn't available. But he did add the Bulls won't have to be trying to pull more assets from interested teams in exchange for adding Caruso into a hypothetical deal attached to Zach, attached to Vooch in this case. Joe Cowley of the Sun-Times also mentioned something recently this week in one of his columns that the Bulls are dangling Vooch out there and seeing if there are any nibbles across the NBA. I just kind of was resigned to my depressed Bulls fan fate that Vooch was like an untradeable contract and an untradeable asset. Now we're hearing, and maybe it's just the Bulls creating this noise themselves and no one's actually that interested, but you proposed a different idea, Will, which was maybe the Golden State Warriors and CP3, who made a decision, and he and the Warriors came to some agreement earlier today about extending his deadline. What do you make of all this Vooch talk and whether or not the Warriors and CP3 could somehow be involved?
Yeah, so what happened with the Warriors and Chris Paul is there was a deadline for them to guarantee Chris Paul's $30 million this year. They extended that deadline from today until tomorrow, and presumably that just means that they are still working on trades for Paul George because they're going to need that $30 million to send out in order to take Paul George's $48 million back. So obviously they're going to need to get $18 more million in there. But if they can't trade for Paul George and they do want to make improvements, and obviously, Vooch had a down year, but like he's still a very quality big, and I think he would represent an upgrade for the Warriors. So in order to help them and their luxury tax bill, you send Vooch's $20 million. The Warriors could guarantee Chris Paul's contract up for any amount that they want. So they could ship out $25 million to make the salaries work. I think because there has to be within 20% or something like that of what the outgoing salary is. So the Bulls take back Chris Paul's money. That saves the Warriors $10 million on their cap, but like even more than that in luxury tax bills. They get an upgrade at center, and then they can kind of move forward from there. I mean, I think Vooch plays well in the Warrior system, right? Like they put bigs on the elbows, they run split actions. Like he could be in a situation to succeed. He's probably not closing games for them. They like to go small with Draymond at the 5, but I do think that's an upgrade over Looney, who really kind of fell off a cliff last year. And so that could be an option if they strike out on Paul George.
Yeah.
So Dreads is just commenting. We'd get CP3. They could keep him, or they could just like buy him out. And you pay for the majority of that contract, get him out of here, let him go sign with whoever he wants. But you've now maybe gotten off of Vooch's contract. That would wipe off the books completely the following year, or maybe they send you an asset too, because they're saving so much money and utilizing that salary spot of Chris Paul in order to now leverage that into a player that can help them.
Yeah, he would get bought out in my opinion. There's no way Chris Paul would play here. He would definitely get bought out. But I wanted to ask you, with the league seeing how the Bulls handled the Caruso situation, which is kind of a deal where I think everybody kind of widely thought they would get a little bit more for Josh Giddey. How do you think the league kind of looks at and views the Bulls when they're trying to dangle a piece like Vooch, seeing how they operated in trades when they truly just wanted somebody they wanted, and now they have somebody that they have no problem getting rid of? Does the team look at them a little bit differently, like as far as what they might offer the Bulls, because they won't be at a position of strength like they were with Caruso and still took a lesser deal, in my opinion?
Potentially. I mean, I think it really comes down to like who wants these players. There was a super chat from earlier asking a similar question from Robert Kranis. Can't help but wonder if we sign and trade DeMar, get a couple of seconds, and it could be used then to add to a Zach trade. And then thoughts on Double O Matas, which is your little handle there, Dave. But yeah, I mean, I think like if teams start to become interested in the Bulls players, which could happen, then that puts the Bulls in a situation where they can extract some assets. And I think once some of these contracts start to come in, and I was like working on this whole extension and, contract calculator to try to figure out what some of these guys are going to make next year. Like Brandon Ingram's contract, for example, is going to be his max extension right now for 4 years is $226 million. That's an average of $56 million a year. Would you rather trade multiple picks and then pay him $56 million a year? Or would you rather take Zach LaVine for free and pay him $46 million a year for the next 3 years, get him off your books sooner? So all of a sudden, I think once these contracts start to come in, maybe the answer is neither. But if you are committed, like the Kings are, to trying to find a wing and a scorer and a high level one, Zach LaVine, I think, starts to become a little bit more enticing. And I think same with Vooch. Like these contracts are just getting so big. And so the number that Vooch is on, $20 million, is still a lot, but it's a smaller percentage of the salary cap. That makes it easier to absorb, especially if you're sending out more money. And so, the Bulls could actually potentially get something, whether it's cap relief long-term or assets in order to move forward with, larger contracts that would be coming in. I think they could be in a good spot here. Again, I don't think that they're going to be like the first dominoes to fall. This is going to be, okay, the Warriors struck out on Paul George. Now what do we do? Okay, maybe we start to look at Vooch. Or, the 76ers struck out on Paul George and Ingram. Okay, now what do they look to do? Maybe Zach LaVine or DeRozan become a little bit more palatable to them. So I think the free agent deals are going to start rolling in at 5 p.m. on Sunday night. I don't think a Bulls thing is going to happen necessarily right away. But later next week, when some of these dominoes start to fall, I think there's going to be some action on the Bulls roster for sure.
The other part of this conversation about the Bulls maybe shopping Vooch around and seeing if they can find a new home for him, and I think somebody in the comments brought it up earlier while advocating for Andre Drummond to stick around, is if the Bulls do find a deal for Vooch, who the hell is the Bulls starting center to begin the 24-25 season?
It's a no-go.
I mean,
the truth, man. That's what it is. Like, there's no one else left unless they go out and sign another guy. I don't know who will be out there, who will be available. I'm sure we'll find out, when free agency hits. Maybe they just sign one of those guys to be it, but he's going to get playing time.
There's not a great free agent market of bigs this summer. There isn't.
Exactly.
And especially in the Bulls price range.
Yeah, which should be zero. So, yeah, just you're going to get Sanogo, and I think that's what it is. You get him and maybe a veteran who you might start over him, who you might not. I don't know. So maybe the Summer League is kind of telling. Maybe they're looking at that also in the Summer League to see how Sanogo kind of responds and reacts. Like, can we put him at that position and see? But I don't see another option that you're looking at, Will. Is there something else?
I think there's going to be options out there, but it really just depends on what the Bulls do with DeRozan. We've been talking about sign-in trades here. They could just renounce him and let him go find a home in free agency where he signs into, somebody's mid-level exception or cap space. All of a sudden, the Bulls, maybe they bring back Patrick, but they've got themselves a little bit of cap space now. They can bring back Andre Drummond to start games and then have Sanogo come off the bench. They could sign somebody like Goga Bitadze, who I think would be a fantastic signing. He played with the Magic last year. Really good rim protector, put up incredible defensive efficiency numbers when he had a chance to start in place of Wendell Carter, who was hurt a million times. That's a guy who, the Magic are probably not going to pay a third string center. The Bulls could maybe go out and sign him if they clear out this space. But that's why moving on from DeRozan does have its benefits, even just aside from it helps you tank, because now it also helps you open up space to be able to bring in some new options. And that's what you've got to do when you are kind of resetting a little bit. You've got to bring in more young guys. You've got to try stuff out. And you've got to find guys that are on your same timeline. I think Bitadze would be awesome. And I think he's going to be kind of like the next, not like Hartenstein. I think Hartenstein's a little bit more skilled as a passer. But in terms of him being the analytics darling who everybody's you got to sign this guy. I think he's kind of up next in that mold. And if you can get ahead of the curve on that, I think he'd be really good.
Hartenstein feels like we're trying to win now move to make.
Yeah,
as far as offseason roster transactions, that's not the Bulls have no business going after Isaiah Hartenstein, especially because he's going to have suitors all over the place and he's going to command a pretty big payday. South Garcon, meanwhile, just throwing out the idea that the Bulls should bring back Felicio while also misspelling Felicio's name. I feel like that is the accurate amount of respect due to one Cristiano Felicio. Travis agreeing. Goat saying Goga Batazde would be fun. Rob saying the pace with the Damazanogo would pick up. His motor doesn't stop. Ay caramba. Meanwhile, Robert saying, remember, Matt, we want to be trash. So the worse the center, the better. We need that 2025 pick. Yeah, no, it was more a curiosity than a worry when I'm saying if they find a trade for Vooch, who the hell's their starting center? I don't give a crap. I like flag. Next season is not about wins, I mean, at least it shouldn't be. And let's hope that AK keeps making moves that make that clearer and clearer. I'll be pleasantly surprised and maybe even just a tiny dash of impressed if they find a deal for Vooch. I really will. I think that that's harder to do than finding a team that wants to bring in DeMar on an extended trade, or even finding a team that wants to take a swing on Zach LaVine still in his prime all-star upside.
Yeah, and that could be the case. Like maybe, again, we talked about, kind of jump starting this rebuild so that it doesn't last a million years. Having a veteran player who can help develop some of these younger guys, who's a good passer, who can set guys up, I think that could help guys like Matas Buzelis, could help guys like Kobe White continue to build that, chemistry in the pick and roll, and then have Vooch as a short roll passer. I think there's going to be a lot more movement and cutting with this kind of team. If DeRozan's not here, there's no excuse not to play faster. Like I think Vooch can help you in some of those ways. Like I said at the top, though, like the question or concern with that is, does he help you so much that all of a sudden you now convey that 11th pick? Because that, again, cannot happen. So, even if they don't move on from Vooch, maybe you play him fewer minutes. Maybe you try to move him at the deadline or next summer. Like these contracts are going to get bigger and bigger, and 20 million, 21 million, whatever he's making next year is going to be a smaller and smaller percentage of the cap. And so for teams who are looking to upgrade at center, even if it's a backup on a 1-year deal or, 1.5, I mean, that's not that bad. So do I expect the Bulls to get the same kind of package that they gave up to get Vooch? Absolutely not. But I do think it could be possible to just get off of him if that's what they want to do at some point.
Will, I just want to point out we're talking about centers and I haven't even said it. I just want
Thank you for not saying it.
You said it.
What haven't you said?
I ain't said it. No, it's all right. I ain't said it, man. I'm saving it. You'll know it when I actually pull it out and use it, man. But I'm saying it's too early. It's too early. Yeah, it's too early. It's too early.
Okay. Speaking of the joke ideas for centers, somebody mentioning, Felicio earlier, dysfunctional in the comments, or who was it who said no? Somebody else said Omer Sheik, but they also misspelled his name. And I am, it was dysfunctional saying Omer. You put some respect on Omer Sheik's name. Because that dude was a legendary Bull, a Sheik and destroy. We're talking deep playoff runs. Omer Sheik, bloody face, still out there playing, baby. Dude.
Double machine.
Got himself a nice payday from Rockets, right? After he left the Bulls?
Yep. Yes. Yep.
Good for him.
And he was doing well. He was playing well for the Rockets, too. And then Dwight Howard came in and just took all of everything from him, and that was the end of Omer Sheik.
Oh, Robert's guess is that Big Dave is referring to Buzelis playing a small ball 5, and that's maybe what you and Will were joking about.
No, that's not it. That's not it. Nope, but shout out to
you. Okay. Meanwhile, Tyson Rolando is trying to make me cry as we head into our weekend by saying, bring Joe out of retirement. Don't. I can't handle that. That is it. We are just about out of time for today. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Not only today's show, but all draft week long. All of our shows this week were brought to you by our friends at Coors Light. Make the most out of the time you choose to chill, like this weekend, for example. Choose Coors Light. Grab yourself some icy, delicious Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart. Go to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Basketball. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Coors Light will be rolling right along with us throughout the rest of our off-season content. We still, despite the draft being over, we'll have 5 episodes a week for y'all, all off-season long. As always, next on deck, of course, it's NBA free agency with some of those deadlines coming in tomorrow, as the GOAT explained, and of course, officially NBA free agency kicking off Sunday evening, 5 p.m. Central Time, June 30th, and we will be there throughout all of that. Like GOAT said, might have a little bit of waiting to do before the Bulls dominoes fall, but we will be here all next week. I believe we are taking the 4th of July off as a holiday, but we will have 4 episodes for y'all next week. In the meantime, read all of GOAT's stuff. Catch up on anything you haven't read yet. AllCHGO.com from his immensely incredible draft week coverage. Follow him, Will_Gottlieb. You can follow Big Dave at BAWL Sports. I'm Bulls_Peck. Shout out and thanks to our guy behind the scenes, rocking the producer's controls. It's the one and only Stephen Nicholas, sitting in for Joey today. We are CHGO_Bulls. Have a great weekend, Bulls Nation. Let's see what happens in free agency. Not too far away. Talk to you Monday or maybe sooner, depending on what happens. Until next time, see Red, be good. DJ and roll.
We all silly like the mayor.